He started with nothing, a poor farm boy from Massachusetts who ran away from home at 14 with just $5 in his pocket. No connections, no education, no safety net. By the time he was 30, he had made and lost millions multiple times over. And at the peak of his career, he did something so extraordinary, so impossibly brilliant, that it shocked the entire financial world. In a single day, October 29th, 1929, while the entire American economy collapsed around him, while banks failed, while millionaires jumped from buildings, while families lost everything they had ever worked for, Jesse Livermore made $100 million. $100 million in a single day in 1929. That is the equivalent of over $1.8 billion today. Who was this man? How did he do it? And what were the rules that took a penniless farm boy and turned him into the greatest trader who ever lived? Stay with me, because what you are about to hear could change the way you think about markets, money, and success forever. This is his story, in his own words, from the man himself. My name is Jesse Livermore, and I was 14 years old when I left home with $5 in my pocket and a hunger that no amount of food could satisfy. I did not want land. I did not want safety. I did not want the quiet, predictable life my father had planned for me. I wanted the market. And the market, that cold, merciless, beautiful machine, became my teacher, my enemy, my obsession, and my salvation all at once. I made $100 million in a single day while the world burned around me. I also lost everything. Not once, not twice, but 4 times over. I have stood at the absolute peak of Wall Street, and I have sat in the absolute darkness of bankruptcy. And from all of it, the wins, the losses, the glory, and the ruin, I extracted a set of rules. Rules that I'm going to share with you today. Listen carefully, because what I'm about to tell you took me a lifetime to learn. People look at what I achieved and they assume I must have come from money, from connections, from privilege. I came from none of those things. I was born in Shrewsbury, Massachusetts in 1877. My father was a farmer, a good man, a hard-working man, but a man who could not understand why his son spent every spare moment staring at numbers instead of tending to the land. I could not explain it to him. How do you explain to someone that numbers speak to you, that patterns whisper secrets that nobody else can hear? At 14, I made my decision. I packed what little I had, said goodbye to my mother, who slipped me $5 and whispered that she believed in me, and I walked away from the farm forever. I walked straight into a brokerage house in Boston called Payne Webber, and I asked for a job. They gave me one. My task was simple. Chalk up the stock prices on the board as they came in over the ticker tape. I was paid almost nothing, but I was not there for the money. I was there to learn. Every number I wrote down, I memorized. Every movement I recorded, I studied. I was not just a boy chalking numbers on a board. I was a student of the greatest teacher that has ever existed, the market itself. At 15, I made my first trade, $5, everything I had, and I walked away with a profit of $3.12. It was not the money that excited me, it was the confirmation. The market had spoken, and I had listened correctly. I knew then that this was my destiny. Before Wall Street, there were the bucket shops, dark, smoky rooms where men bet on the movements of stocks without ever actually owning them. Most people considered them disreputable places. I considered them my training ground. I became something of a legend in those rooms, not because I was lucky, because I was disciplined, because I had already begun to develop the rules that would define my entire career. They started banning me. One by one, the bucket shops of Boston refused to take my trades. I would walk through the door and the owner would shake his head before I even opened my mouth. I was 16 years old. I found this amusing and instructive. If the house does not want to take your bet, it means you have an edge. And an edge is everything in this business. By the time I was 20, I had turned my original $5 into over $10,000. Every penny of it earned by reading the tape and trusting my own judgment over the opinions of everyone around me. But I knew the bucket shops were not the real test. The real test was Wall Street, the real market, where the big money moved and where the big lessons were waiting. I went to Wall Street full of confidence. The market humbled me almost immediately, and that humbling taught me my first great rule. When I arrived on Wall Street, I lost nearly everything in a matter of weeks. I was confused, angry. I had been almost unbeatable in the bucket shops. What was different here? Everything was different, and nothing was different. What I had to learn, what took me painful, expensive months to understand, was that the market does not care about your opinions. It does not care about the opinions of newspaper columnists. It does not care about the tips whispered between friends at dinner parties. It does not care about what any man on earth thinks it should do. The market does what it does, and your only job, your entire job, is to read it correctly. My first rule is this: read the market itself, not the noise that surrounds it. I never took tips, not from friends, not from brokers, not from men who swore they had inside information. By the time a tip reaches your ears, it is already worthless. The men who acted on that information have already acted. You are always last in line with a tip. I developed my own method. I studied price movements. I watched how stocks behaved before the big moves came. I listened to what the tape was whispering when everyone else was shouting. There is only one side to the stock market, not the bull side, not the bear side, the right side. Learn to find the right side. Ignore everything else. I have watched more men destroy their own profits than I have watched the market destroy them. They get into a winning trade, they see the profit growing, and then, driven by fear, by impatience, by the desperate need to lock in something before it disappears, they sell. Too early. Always too early. And then they watch the stock continue to move exactly as they had predicted. They were right. They just did not have the courage to stay right. My second rule is the one that made me more money than any other. Sit tight and let your profits run. It was never my thinking that made the big money for me. It was always my sitting tight. Read those words again. Let them sink in. The big money is not made in the small moves. The big money is made in the major trends, the sustained, powerful moves that go on for weeks and months. To capture those moves, you must have something that most traders simply do not possess: patience. Every instinct you have will tell you to take the profit and run. Every fear you carry will whisper that it cannot last. Ignore those instincts. Silence those fears. Trust your analysis and sit still while the market does the work. That is where the real fortunes are made. In the sitting. If sitting tight in a winner is the hardest thing to do, then cutting a loss immediately is the second hardest. Hope is the most dangerous word in a trader's vocabulary. I have seen men of intelligence, of experience, of genuine talent destroyed completely by hope. They get into a losing trade, and instead of accepting the loss and moving on, they hope. They hope the market will turn. They hope their analysis was right and the market is temporarily wrong. They hope today will be different from yesterday. The market does not reward hope. The market punishes it. My third rule is absolute and without exception. Cut your losses immediately and without mercy. The moment a trade moves against me beyond my predetermined point, it is closed. No argument, no second chances, no waiting to see what tomorrow brings. Out. A loss never troubles me after I take it. I forget it overnight, but being wrong and refusing to take the loss, that destroys not just your account, but your confidence, your judgment, and eventually your soul. Small losses are the price of admission in this business. They are inevitable. Every trader takes them. The question is never whether you will have losses. The question is whether you will keep them small. Keep them small. Always, without exception. That discipline saved me more times than any brilliant trade I ever made. I want to tell you something that took me years to truly understand. The market never lies. People lie, companies lie, brokers lie, newspapers lie. But the market, the pure movement of prices driven by the collective behavior of every buyer and every seller, that never lies. My fourth rule is this: the market is always telling you what to do. Your only job is to learn how to listen. I spent years developing what I called my market key, a method for tracking price movements and identifying the major turning points before they became obvious to everyone else. I kept detailed notebooks. I tracked patterns obsessively. I treated the study of the market the way a scientist treats the study of nature, because that is what it is. The market is human nature expressed in numbers, fear and greed and hope and panic, all of it visible in the price if you know how to look. The game of speculation is the most fascinating game in the world, but it is not a game for the lazy. It is not a game for the emotional. It is not a game for those who want quick riches without deep study. They will lose. They always lose. But for those who are willing to study, to observe, to listen, the market will reveal itself. Slowly, painfully sometimes, but it will reveal itself. And when it does, you must have the courage to act on what it tells you. even when every voice around you says you are wrong. By the summer of 1929, I had been watching the American market for months with growing unease. The prices were rising too fast. Too many ordinary people, people who had never owned a stock in their lives, were borrowing money to buy shares in companies they did not understand. The optimism was not just high, it was delirious. I had seen this pattern before, not at this scale, but I recognized the pattern. I began to build my short position quietly, carefully, over months. I was betting that the entire market, the greatest bull market in American history, was about to collapse. My friends thought I had lost my mind. My brokers were nervous. People around me were getting rich every single day, and I was betting against them. I did not waver. The market had told me what was coming. I had listened, and I trusted what I had heard. Then came October 1929. The market cracked. Then it broke. Then it fell apart in the most catastrophic collapse in financial history. Fortunes built over decades evaporated in days. Banks failed. Companies vanished. Men who had been millionaires on Monday were ruined by Friday. And I collected $100 million in profit. The newspapers called me the man who broke the market. Some people despised me for it, but I had not broken anything. I had simply read what the market was telling me and had the courage, the absolute unwavering courage, to act on it when the entire world was telling me I was wrong. That is the lesson. Not the $100 million, the courage. The courage to trust your own judgment when everyone around you disagrees. I must tell you something now that I wish someone had told me when I was that 15-year-old boy making his first trade. I lost everything 4 times in my life. 4 times I went from extraordinary wealth to complete bankruptcy. And every single time, without exception, the reason was the same. I broke my own rules, not because I forgot them, not because I did not know better, but because I allowed my emotions, my fear, my pride, my impatience to override the discipline I had spent decades building. That is the greatest rule of all, and it is the hardest. The market is not your greatest enemy. Your own mind is your greatest enemy. Fear will make you sell too early. Greed will make you hold too long. Pride will stop you from admitting you are wrong. Hope will keep you in losing trades until they destroy you. I felt all of these things. Every trader does. The difference between those who survive and those who do not is not the absence of emotion. It is the ability to feel every emotion fully and still follow your rules. Master yourself and you can master the market. That is the only secret I ever found, and I found it the hard way, through losses that would have broken most men, through failures that the whole world watched, through a journey that took everything from me more than once. But I always came back, because the rules always worked when I had the discipline to follow them. Remember that. When the market tests you, and it will test you, remember that the rules exist precisely for those moments. Follow them, no matter what. I have told you what I know. The market is still out there, still moving, still testing, still rewarding those who are disciplined and punishing those who are not. The ticker tape has changed, the tools have changed, the names on the board have changed, but human nature has not changed, and the market is nothing more than human nature expressed in numbers. So read it carefully. Cut your losses without mercy. Let your winners run. Sit tight when everything in you screams to move. And above all, master yourself. My name is Jesse Livermore. I was the greatest trader who ever lived. And now, these rules are yours. Use them well.